Welcome to the Growers Mineral Podcast. This episode features audio from our most recent conference call. Each month, we host a live discussion on Zoom, bringing together farmers, agronomists, and industry experts to share insights on soil health, crop nutrition, and sustainable farming practices. For more information about Growers Mineral or to join our next call, visit growersmineral.com. And now, enjoy the discussion.
Welcome everyone to the Thursday conference call. I know we had some issues last week, but we hopefully got those all cleaned up. We did add a new option to listen to this after the fact. This is something that people in the Amish and Mennonite community have been asking for. So if you do call in to the Growers Main line number and hit 500, it will take you to the most recent conference call, so you can listen to that afterwards. We're going to put out some more information. That's just a new thing, and we're still kind of working through it, but just so you guys are all aware that that's also an option. So with that, Jim, take it away.
Okay. Thanks, Russ. Russ tried that out on James and me, and man, it's pretty simple. We've got the other approach. You get a notification, and I assume Russ will keep that, and then you can get to the last conference call. But this one is, you just call right into the 800 number, and then, when they give you the option to poke in a number, you just put in the 500, and it works great. It's very simple for guys that want to listen to it again, that aren't as articulate, with the IT stuff. So this month, guys, if you look at the calendar, we've got a picture of a very sizable lime pile, and that happens to be in Kansas. And we were out there working with Norman Mann, and it's kind of a new area for us, and trying to get the growers program implemented. And so we were talking with him about the finer points of calcium application. And actually what we were doing at that point is just getting a sample and getting that run to make sure we had the right ratio between the calcium and the magnesium. And see, again, this is something that every fall at growers, we try to emphasize, getting the calcium on, getting that exchange number up there, trying to approach 80 on calcium on the exchange complex, and try to push that magnesium down to 10 or at least below 15. And again, this is a way of aerating the soil, getting the oxygen in. But there's a lot of other things, that go along with that. The oxygen is getting the right population of microbes in the soil, but you're also feeding them, which is giving us the right population of microbes. So that is something, for those of you that aren't as familiar with the growers program, something that we try to stress. And in the main part of the picture, it's Norman and Daniel Wolf and Dave Armstrong, and that's at a stone quarry basically. And again, these guys don't have any idea what they're going to do with this pile. And so we're trying to educate Norman to try to get that thing out in the field so guys can see what happens when they get the calcium level built in the soil. And next spring, probably about our last call in April, I think the 26th calendar, we're actually digging around in Norman's field. And I'll tell you, we got educated, man. Some of that stuff is almost like I-70. So we think that there's a very good spot to get this calcium on and make some things happen. But up in the corner of the picture is another picture, and that's a pile of lime up in North Dakota. And Keith Shutt is on with us tonight, and I'm just going to turn this thing over to Keith and let him talk a little bit about what he's doing up there in North Dakota. He's had great success once he's established the lime business, but now with this commodity inversion, and some of these guys think they're going broke. this is one of the things they want to kind of pull away from. And this is a struggle for Keith to try to keep these guys, keeping that calcium on, because we believe that's the way you're going to whittle on these fertility inputs, is to get these microbes going in the soil. So I'll kind of let Keith take over and tell you where he's from, where he's at exactly. He's not that far from Canada, and what's happening in the Red River Valley, and he'll talk a lot about where they're at. Sugar beet prices, it's a big issue. So Keith can kind of educate us about that north central region a little bit. So Keith, if you're ready to go, I'm going to let you go ahead and educate us a little bit about your area of the country.
All right, thanks, Jim. So yes, I'm Keith Shutt, northeast North Dakota, right in the Red River Valley of North Dakota, the Red River of the North, and we have 5 sugar beet factories in the valley, so we have a large access to sugar beet lime, which they call spent lime. It's calcium carbonate. It's like 36% calcium and less than 1% magnesium, so very, very good product. And yes, there is nutrient value in it. So the guys that have been doing it for several years, their soil test phosphate levels just keep climbing. And obviously, the first thing that they notice is soil structure. They just can't believe how mellow the ground is and how easy it tills up, and they don't have the big boulders in the fall when they go out there with the chisel plow anymore. They've disappeared because of the fact that we've aerated the soil and increased the microbe population, so a lot more oxygen pockets. And then, like I tell guys, it's basically like your garden that you've spoiled. So, but our soil pH up here is very high, so we're 8.1 to 8.3, very high pH soil. So of course, Land Grant University tells you that you got to be very careful with putting lime on, because you're going to drive the pH to the moon. And so when somebody calls and says, well, we'd like to do lime, but our soil pH is too high, how much can we put on? I always tell them, well, we could put 100 ton to the acre on, but you probably can't afford that, so 10 ton would be a good start. And then they're like, wow, what would the pH be if we did that? And I said, well, I don't know, probably 7.4, 7.5. It'd take a while, but it would get there. And they're like, really? It would go down? I said, well, yes, you have to remember that calcium, if you put it in acid, it's an alkali, and if you put it in an alkali, it acts like an acid because it always wants to be neutral. So I said, yes, if you had low pH, obviously it would come up, but we have very high pH in the valley, so it would go down. And it does take several years to get it to move. And I mean, I've seen guys now that I started with 14 years ago, and they're down in that 7.6 to 7.7 range. So, some of that stuff's come down, 0.5 of a point. So that's pretty big. But normally, over the last couple of years, we've been doing about 100,000 ton, 100,000 ton in a fall. So we start when they take the hard red spring wheat off in August, and we normally spread until sometime into November. We went as far as this Thanksgiving before we finished up 2 years ago. We spread right up through the first week of January because it was so nice. But this year, obviously, acres are way down. Sugar beet payment got cut by a third. So the payment is pretty much at what it costs to produce, or a little less than what it costs to produce. One of the trade deals, they brought some sugar in from Europe, and that affected the market. And then, of course, American Crystal, the last 2 years have had record crops back to back. So they have an excess of sugar, and that hurt them as well. So a lot of guys have cut back on lime, And surprisingly enough, I've actually picked up a few guys because they talked to the neighbor, and the neighbor said, well, a lot of phosphate in that lime, and it's the cheapest phosphate you're going to buy, which is not a lie. So, most guys up here in the valley, most guys are within 30 miles of a sugar beet factory. So by the time that they paid a truck and spread a 10-ton rate, they're roughly in that $150 an acre range. The nutrient value in the beet lime, when we priced it this spring, was at a 10-ton rate, was about $218 for a 10-ton application. And fertilizers went up quite a bit since then. So I would have to think that we're probably closer to that $245 an acre now in nutrient value at a 10-ton rate. So I have picked up a few new guys this year, which is kind of interesting, just due to the fact that all the commodity prices are way down. But it is obviously it is a struggle. I mean, I have equipment payments just like everybody else does, so it keeps everything very interesting for sure.
Keith, I got a question for you.
Go ahead.
At $245 an acre, estimate the amount of years that you can amortize that investment over.
Well, normally you'll get 10 years out of that. I have several customers that say at about year 9 is kind of where everything peaks, and year 10 when they soil test it, everything's kind of flatlining again. So for the first 9 years, it's just a steady climb. In the valley, most guys' phosphate levels are very low, somewhere between 3 and we'll say 12 parts per million on an Olsen test. I have guys that we spread lime 4 or 5 years ago, and their phosphate levels today are somewhere between 60 and 85 parts per million. And every one of them has asked the agronomist, how much phosphate will we have to put on to get to that? They have no idea. So that it's kind of interesting. But the other thing that's interesting is, and I ask this question to a lot of guys, I'll say, what do you spend an acre on fertilizer? They have no clue. No clue. They get the bill at the end of planting and they just write the check and pay it. They have no idea what they're spending per acre. So kind of interesting.
You amortize $245 over 10 years. That's pretty easy math.
Yeah, $24.50 an acre over 10 years.
I had a friend call me today and told me that his DAP application is going to cost him $165 for next year.
Oh, I believe that, and he's not putting a lot on at that price.
And they want that every year.
No, that's right.
Yeah, no, he's just
That's
going
right.
out there and dribbling it on. That's a very low rate for that much money.
See,
I tell guys all the time, the worst investment you'll ever make as a farmer is a dry fertilizer program. That is the worst money you will ever spend on your farm operation, and that I will promise you.
So, Keith, can you chat a little bit about how the spent lime that you're getting, how does that occur from the sugar, making the sugar process? Explain that a little bit so guys understand, where this calcium carbonate's coming from.
So they bring in limestone rock, and it's it's somewhere in that 4 to 6 inch size rock, limestone. They unload it off a rail car. It goes through a crusher, and then it goes into a kiln. And then of course it's cooked at about, because they layer it. They put a layer of coke in there, and then a layer of limestone, and the tower's tall. It's a couple hundred feet, and they they light that on fire and they get it burning. And when it gets up to about 2,200 degrees, it gets dropped into a vat of water. So when that rock hits that water, of course, it explodes. And then it goes into the cooking process, and that is how they extract the sugar from the molasses. Without the calcium in there, they cannot separate the two. And so it goes through a whole cooking process. And when the process is done, it goes down a line, and it actually goes into a very big press. And they squeeze that material to extract the juice from it. And then of course, there's some of the juice is real clear, and some of it is cloudy and murky, and it actually layers out in the tank, and that's how they separate the two when they're done pressing it. The murky stuff actually goes back into the cook process, and it gets run through again, try to recover as much as they can. And so when that's done, it goes out of the factory, and then it is actually, they have to pay the EPA for a landfill permit, because when American Crystal Sugar Company has it on their property, the EPA classifies it as a hazardous material. And the minute that a farmer signs a removal agreement with American Crystal to take spent lime, it is classified as fertilizer. So it's all about the money.
Right.
So
yeah, I'd like to comment
without the calcium. Without the calcium, they could not separate the sugar and the molasses.
Right. I want to comment a little bit on that, guys. See, the phosphorus is coming out of the beets or any of the dirt that might be with the beets, and that's what's ending up in the spent lime. But when they do these soil tests, they're picking some of that up. But the other thing is the phosphorus that's in the soil is starting to become more available also. Those guys that have been working with Keith, yeah, they're bringing in phosphorus with the lime, but they're also making what's in the soil more available with the calcium addition, because what that's doing is fertilizing the microbes. It's helping them to breathe, and they are actually releasing the phosphorus that's in the soil. See, when they say that the soil test is very low, that isn't a complete extraction of the phosphorus. That's just a certain availability. And as they get those microbes working, the availability phosphorus goes up. So what they pick up on the soil test goes up also. So the benefits from the calcium are helping with that phosphorus. And, you know, the guy's point about the expensive phosphorus is very well taken, because that right now just continues to go up. If you look at the fertilizer quotes from DTN every week, DAP and MAP are over the 5% increase. And that right now, you got guys like the agronomist from Farm Journal, Ken Ferry, saying, well, maybe we can back off on this a little bit. But he's kind of backed water on that and has said you have to be very careful about that, because with these new racehorse varieties, if you don't get that soluble phosphorus in there, you can put on a ton of nitrogen. And see, that's how they're getting around. Back in 08 and 09, when it went to the moon, they quit putting on phosphorus, but they piled on a ton of nitrogen. Well, that isn't going to work as well now, because nitrogen was high back then, but proportionately, picking that pace up now it's not going to give them the economics, because it's not going to give them the return, because without the phosphorus you're not going to get the yield. So that it's going to be an issue. Keith, I'd like you to comment a little bit about Fargo clay loam, so that our audience has an appreciation of what you're dealing with up there.
Right. What they classify as, we have Fargo clay here. It is black soil, very sticky and very tight. If you work it wet and it turns dry, it's basically just like an asphalt highway. That's about the easiest way to explain it. very unforgiving. So when we put 10 ton of lime on it, it just makes it so mellow. It's just absolutely unbelievable the difference it makes. But it takes that much to get the reaction to do that too. We tried 7.5 ton, and we just don't get any reaction out of the soil. It's just not enough calcium to overcome the magnesium levels in this ground. So
yeah, no, that's
I explained to guys, you walk out into a field after a rain and you get back to the pickup and your boots are 2 inches thicker. That's magnesium.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, no, I think that's why it requires that 10 ton. You know, some guys get weak-kneed when they hear that, but you know, Keith's experience up there, that with that tougher high clay content black dirt, that's where they start to see the reaction, so they can get that air into the soil.
Right.
Okay, very good.
And
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, you know, everybody will tell you that you got to be careful with calcium, that you're going to get nutrient tie-up. And like I explained to guys, the calcium is not what gives you the tie-up. It's the magnesium in the soil that gives you the tie-up.
That's right.
Oh.
Exactly. Okay, very good, Keith. Hey, I appreciate it. We took a little tour to North Dakota, so probably Norman, I'm going to give you a little bit of leeway. I'm going to let Armstrong go next and let him talk a little bit about Iowa and what's going on down there. And then after David's done, Norman, I think you're going to be on deck. So that'll get your wheels turning a little bit. So David, let's talk a little bit about Iowa, what you're seeing. And they say that decides what the yields are going to be in the country. So tell us what you know.
Oh my goodness. They're all crying a river when they get in the cornfields here. Oh my goodness. I went in and had to get a battery for my for my caliper, so I knew what size of a shaft to buy to fix my junky old machinery up. And the guy in the hardware store said, "What's going on out there anyway? Why do they want to give all this money away to these farmers?" And I said, "Oh, because they're all crying a river." Oh, I said to the guy, I said, "Listen," I said, "you've listened to the media all summer long." I said, "What kind of yield we get?" And he says, "Oh, you got a huge yield." He says, "Everybody knows that." And I says, "Yeah." I says, "Until they put the combine in the field and find out that it's a little different." I would say beans are really good, but you know, the big thing is oh my goodness, I'm down to my, and this is a, you know, an acronym for the amount of standard that you have on a 10-year yield in your crop insurance, your APH. You know, so that's your average percentage of harvest. And anyway, they give a number to that, and then they vary all that according to how you want to buy your insurance and that. So, well, we're at APH or less, and they're all just having a fit about that. You know, Jim, the problem is we got too many people talking about too many things they don't know what they're talking about, and that's the bottom line. So what I'm seeing in Iowa is some very good bean yields, and we're glad to have them. But what I'm seeing in Iowa is I think the corn yields are okay. It's just everybody thinks they need 275 bushel a acre corn, and they're getting 200, and they're getting, well, one fella called me up, and he was pretty honest about it. He said, "Mine's doing 175, and I said, "What do you think?" He says, "Well, I think it's terrible." He says, "I'm used to getting more," but he says, "We get what we get," and that's how it ends up. I want to tag on to what Keith was talking about just a little bit here, if I may.
Absolutely.
I have some soil on a creek bottom, Jim, and you've been on my farm. And this is I want to give I want to talk about this so Norman has encouragement for what we've talked to him about out in Kansas. But you know, when I started on the growers program 30 some years ago, I was able to get all the man-made gypsum that I could handle if I went through this soil testing program, and Growers Mineral Solutions at the time, Wilbur Franklin, we took some soil tests, and guess what? I had some high pH soils. And with what the industry says, just like Keith has been explaining, well, we shouldn't be doing anything calcium wise. Well, so we found gypsum, a little different, but we still were looking at calcium. I took a creek bottom, a 40-acre creek bottom that when it dried out in the summer, it was, you used the term I-70. That's, of course, that's the interstate that runs through Missouri and across the countryside in the southern, and we got I-80. So I'm going to use I-80, okay? So it would turn into I-80. And then when it would rain, then it would turn into, I don't know, some kind of a duck pond. And I'm serious, there actually would be waterfowl float around on some of the ponding that we had out there. So got acclimated with the growers program, threw everything to do with pH to the wind, and we put on 15 ton of nothing other than gypsum. And boy, did that ever attract some attention. I even had a guy tell me that I sterilized that soil for the lifetime of probably myself and the people that would come after me, and how dare could you do something like that? Well, you know, I stuck the combine in the beans today. I don't have a yield monitor that's working, but I'm running a 2188. It's an old machine, 30-foot head, and when I'd make her run 3 miles an hour through them beans and they're dry, it was working that machine. So I'm guessing that the yield is 60 north of it. Mm-hmm. And I have never put, since I've been on this program, any dry P&K on that farm. None. Mm-hmm. And I guess my soils wore out, and that's all the better it's doing. But I'm pretty happy that that's the case. So, mm-hmm. You know, it's just pretty amazing how much bad advice is being given out here in agriculture today. Just how financially we have to suffer because of it. If we could do what Keith Shutt is promoting, get an understanding for that particular thing. So the gypsum is a man-made gypsum. Okay, so it come out of taking high fructose corn syrup out of the starch of corn and at Eddyville, Iowa, which is a Cargill plant. And what they do there is it's similar to sugar beet, but a little different. They don't produce their own product there. They don't coke it and heat it and all that. They bring it in pneumatic trucks, and they've changed that process since. But when they did that process, it come in as high calcium carbonate. And basically what they were doing, I had a scientific friend that worked there. They were trying to correct the pH of the vat to keep everything working properly, so when they would harvest the sugar, it would separate properly, and the specific gravities would be to where they could pull out the particular, the products that come out of the corn, and then they'd end up harvesting the sugar, the high fructose corn sugar, which is, their premier product of what they want. But it took the calcium carbonate to do that. But when they did that, they were correcting pH in the vat, and when they did it, they were using sulfuric acid, so they made man-made gypsum. So it was abundant, and it was good, and it was soluble, and it was the product that I found that I could use.
So hey Dave,
a couple of things.
Dave, before you go any farther, kind of chat a little bit about that disappeared on you, so you had to go to different sources. So what are you working with today as far as calcium sources?
Yeah, currently I had great competition in the water treatment plants. We got a rural water treatment plant nearby, which would be very, very similar to the ideology that Keith's got up there. And I had great competition there. Well, that's all failed and went away. So now I can go pull as much of the product from water treatment as I particularly want, and it's 30 miles away, so it's a great attribute to me. So that's what I went to today. So I'm using high calcium carbonate, and Keith used the term spent lime, and that's where I'm at with it too. So. Yep.
So what's your rotation, Dave? I mean, how do you determine how much? Are you doing like Keith 10 ton of the crack, or you do less more often? What do you try to do that way?
Yeah, I'm after 5. I'm a little different than North Dakota, but here lately I've found the effect of a very great thing that I have really had my eyes opened up to, and this come from the learning from being with the company, is a synergistic effect between composting my pen pack from my cattle operation and the high calcium lime. And it's no science project other than we try to use a vertical beater spreader. We put the compost in the bottom of the spreader, and we try to make it about 30% of high calcium on top of the load. It seems to spread nice. It seems like we get a nice pattern that way, and we just don't have to have a lot of weights and measures and machinery and expense in it. We're just doing what David Armstrong does sometimes, flying off the seat of my pants and being successful doing it. So I'm all about, you're smart, use your intelligence and get this thing done, because that's what farmers do. They don't need a bunch of advisory people out here telling them what to do. You're smart. Just use your smarts and go get it done, guys.
Yeah, that composting thing. See, we've got guys on the Delmarva that we're working with that, their whole goal is to walk away totally from, chemical fertilizer. These guys think that, they can basically build a compost product, with the calcium also, that they can still grow 250 bushel of corn, not use any fertilizer or any inorganic nitrogen at all. So this is kind of the thing that Dave's working on now, and trying to perfect it. And they've got certain things that they're doing, getting dirt from, not the field itself, but say from a woods, to try to increase that certain microbial population. It's a very interesting thing. And see, the people that are working with biochar are looking at it the same way. You get that high calcium with the biochar, then the effect of it is improved significantly. That Dave mentioning that synergy is it's a very big deal. Very big deal.
One of the things I've cultivated and I can't remember the fellow's name that was with our company, and I think he's passed now suddenly from a heart attack, but he introduced the idea and the fact that when you compost, you need to introduce some of your own soil in the compost so you can grow your own biological input, and then you're putting back on your farm your own biological strain.
Right.
And that's one thing I've started to do. Yeah, so we just take the tractor and loader, and when we make the compost pile, we just start to shove some dirt in it and push it around a little bit. We don't do anything. It's not by weights and measures. We just do it, and I'm telling you, it works. let what the good Lord invented to do work. That's the great thing of it.
Yep. So hey, David, I'm going to have to cut you off. You did a great job. I really appreciate it.
Yep. I'm going to say one thing, Jim, real quick.
Yeah, go right ahead.
On the radio station today, on the radio station I listened to today, there's a little bit of controversy about the urea that's coming out of China, that if things don't shake up and go the way they want, they might stop urea from China coming into the U.S. So that's,
oh brother,
yeah, that's a wait and see program. So just want to throw that out there tonight.
Yeah, appreciate that, Dave. So Norman,
very good, Jim.
Appreciate it, Dave. So hey, Norman, if you're ready, this is Norman Mahin, and he's relatively new to the organization. We went out there and worked with him a little bit, and then he's been working with some of our guys, trying to learn the program and trying to get the program going in Kansas. So, Norman, you can talk a little bit about where you live, and talk a little bit about the pile that's in the picture, so that gives guys kind of a reasonable idea what you got there and how you're approaching it, and how the guys in the organization are helping you jump off the end of the dock.
Yeah, well, can you hear me here?
Oh yeah, loud and clear, partner.
Okay.
All righty. Well, yeah, I'm Norman Mahin. Have a wife and 4 children. We live in the northwestern part of western Kansas, and we're about 100 miles from Colorado and about 100 miles from Nebraska. So that's where we live. We're fairly new to growers, and Daniel Wolf is one of my friends. He kind of got me involved in it, and we've been doing it now. This is our second year that we've been working with it, and we've put out several different tests using growers and got several different tests with lime out. We haven't had a lime spreader available, and I just bought a lime spreader here, so we're kind of getting ready to do a little more of that. We have high calcium soil in our area, but recently we've did some testing on it, and we found out that the top 2 inches of our soil was, our test that we did was 37% base saturation of calcium on the top 2 inches, and the 4 inches below that was 55%. And so we recognize that there's probably a need for some calcium there. So we've got a lime spreader, and we got that big pile of high calcium lime. It's about 15 miles away from us, south of Walkeny, Kansas. And
So where'd that pile come from, Norman? How did that pile come into existence?
Well, it is our natural rock. We don't have a lot of rock, but that's what we have for rock out here, and it's all calcium deposit. I mean, it's everywhere. We were in the combine here about a week ago, and my children were looking out the window, and they said, "Dad, did you spread lime here?" And I was like, "Well, no, but that is lime." And so we have it naturally everywhere, and that all they did was dig it up, and they use it for road rock, and these are the fines that they screed out of their road rock is what's there for ag use.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very common thing. I mean, if you see any of the pictures of our western area with that white chalky bluff looking stuff, that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And Keith and Dave were out here, and Daniel and I, and we went, actually took some of it off of some of the property I rent and crushed it up and sent it off, and it's just about as good as that pile is almost.
Mm-hmm. So that's a byproduct of their making roadstone then, correct?
That's right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's just the powder and fines that they screen off of their road rock. Yeah.
Do you, when you guys sent the test in, do you remember what the calcium and magnesium levels are in that dust?
I don't remember. Daniel might, but I don't. And I don't have that information with me here.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it's, from what everybody seemed to think, was fairly good stuff. Really.
So
yeah, the way I remembered, it was like 34% calcium and 3 or 4% magnesium. But
good, very good.
Don't have the test in front of me.
Yeah, no, that would match up. We like to see that 8-to-1 ratio in the liming material. So that would meet that qualification. So Norman, talk a little bit about what testing you've done, and then chat a little bit about the lime spreader and how Keith helped you with that, and what your expectation is with that.
Yeah, well, the testing we've put out several strips of lime, and really, we've only seen a positive result from one strip that we put out. The rest of it, we haven't really been able to tell that anything happened yet.
Okay.
I just sowed wheat on a test that we've done where we put 25 ton of lime on an acre. And I liked what that soil looked like as I pulled my drill through it today.
Okay.
But we're not just really far enough along with our testing process to really be able to have a good grip on all that, but we're working at that.
What about I'm under the impression you did some things with the growers itself with some testing. What did you see there?
We have done that. We took 2 quarters that we planted milo on, and we divided them in half, and we did growers. We did 3 gallons of growers in row on one half, and we did 3 gallons of just 1034O is what we've usually used for in row on the other half. And we feel like we see that it's going to be better, but we have not yet cut that this year. Our harvest hasn't even hardly started yet. So we've just cut a little wet corn, and that's about it. There are guys shelling dry corn, but we're sowing wheat right now. So, but we're hoping to know here in another month a little more of those results on that. But we used growers ourselves last year, and we felt like that if we wouldn't have been using growers, we wouldn't have had the yield we had. I cut my milo. It made 106 bushel to the acre, and that's a pretty reasonable yield here. And we can raise 130 bushel milo on good years, but we had a pretty dry spell in the middle of the summer last year, and it just hurt our milo fairly good. And mine particularly, I was kind of crying the blues for a while, but it did come back, and like I said, it made 106, and I was really happy with it. I feel like that growers helped me out there. I did a little test with some corn, and I cut my corn. It was wet corn this fall here, and I had a little test out there where I had did the same thing, 3 gallons of growers, and then I put 3 gallons of FOSS on in a little few passes. And just going off of the yield monitor, the best I could tell was maybe a 10 or 12 bushel to the acre difference, and the growers would have been the better end of that. So felt like that was pretty beneficial. I was happy with my yield. I got about right at 100 bushel dry bushels. I took it off wet, but converted back to dry. I got around right at 100. So that was pretty good. Our corn here can make 150, but we make 70 more often than we do 150 for sure. So this was a good year.
What kind of crop mix do you normally have? What is your base crops, or do you try to guess that on the weather, or how does that work?
As far as crops we grow?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, we grow milo on the farm I work on is pretty much our main crop. Which is, the rest of the world knows that as grain sorghum, but we call it milo, I guess. But and then corn is fairly large, and wheat. Kansas has always been wheat,
Mhm.
but we also do sunflowers, and that pretty much covers it. I mean, we had one farmer tried some canola this year, and I
Mhm.
thought it looked like he had a pretty nice crop, but he said it didn't turn out that well, and he didn't know if he'd do it again next year. So, I don't know. That's
What's
the
your
first canola I've ever seen here. So
what's your biggest challenge? Dry weather, Norm?
yeah, it is. Yeah,
Mhm.
lack of moisture is definitely our biggest challenge. Yeah,
Okay.
we
Very
get
good.
we get heat, we get wind, and we get lower rainfall. So
Hmm. I
yeah.
understand. I understand. What's the livestock situation out there? Is that pretty prevalent, or is that kind of minimal? It's mostly row crop area. What's that situation?
Um. Oh, there's a lot of cattle in the country yet.
Hmm.
I don't know. Over the years, a lot of grass has gotten broke out to farm ground, and people did more row crop. Probably broke out more of it than should have been, really, because we're about better suited for grass in some ways. But anyway, once they break it out, the land's worth more, and so you're not going back the other way.
Yeah. No.
But
What are
but
they doing? What they do with the cattle? Is that in feedlots, or are they pasturing these animals, or are they making hay? What's the deal there? And what kind of cattle are they? Are
um,
they feeders, or they finishing cattle, or are they cow calf?
well, we have both. We have a decent amount of cow calf in the area, and we have a lot of bigger sized feed yards out here, and that's where a lot of our grain goes to. We
Hmm.
have an ethanol plant, local ethanol plant. They take a decent amount of grain too, but by and large, our corn goes to our feed yards. We
I
have
gotcha.
several big feed yards. Yeah, we they take wet corn. That's where we take our wet corn to, and high moisture, and they ensile it in a pile and feed it to their calves.
I gotcha.
When you say wet corn, Norman, are you talking high moisture grain?
That's right. Yep,
Mhm.
25 to 30% moisture corn.
Okay.
Are they bagging that, or how you handling that?
Oh, they run it through a roller and smash it, then they blow it into a spot basically and push it up in great big piles with
Hmm.
4-wheel drive tractors and pack it like you would silage, and then they cover it with plastic.
I gotcha. Okay. Very good. Well, Norman, I gotta let Daniel get on, so I'm gonna have to cut you off there. But man, you did a great job. Really appreciate it. That gives guys perspective of this is brand new area for us. Norman's in the lead, so we'll try to keep him out here and let us know what's going on. Appreciate it, Norman.
Jim,
All
I got
right.
a picture of the lime spreader up for those that can see it or haven't yet. So we got him armed with I forget if it's a 20 or 24-foot long box, big tandem axle spreader out of South Dakota. There were 3 of them on auction out there, and there were 2 more.
Hmm.
Got a pretty good price on that. So he's armed and ready to go to spread lime.
Very good. Very good. So, Daniel Wolf, are you still going around in a circle, or what's going on? And
No.
Daniel's the other gentleman in the picture with Norman and Dave. And we just want to have Daniel chat a little bit about his operation and what he's doing and what he sees in this. And he'll tell you where he's located and what he sees in that area also. So, if you're ready to go, Daniel, you're in the lead.
All right. You got me?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm Daniel Wolf. We're in southwest Wisconsin and in the hill country. Got started with the growers 15 plus years ago, and continue spreading more and more lime since we've been talking about that. I got a brother that is pretty well. We get in the field and harvesting, and it's poor. He's ready to bring the lime out there. He's sees a good advantage of that. So I'm not alone in it. Here we've hadn't focused. I mean, we focus on lower volumes every year. The last 10 years now, till this past year, we wanted to break that rut, and so we went to putting 2-3 ton to the acre on, more closer to 3 ton for our area, on ground that what we would have considered decent already, and we definitely are very happy with it this year, which we've had timely rains, and month ago we said the hay was done, or we was done making hay, and we're just yesterday we put the hay mower to it. So we cut 4 crops off of spring seeding this year. So, and that would have had 3 ton of lime on it this spring. So it appears like we're proud. I mean, it's very, very rough, but we're averaging, this would be wet tons, but we're averaging about between 3 and 4 ton to the acre here on 5th crop, 4th and 5th. I mean, new seeding be 4th crop, everything else 5th crop. So there's years we wouldn't take 5 crops, but we just couldn't leave all that out there, I guess. So we're working it off.
So hey, Daniel, talk a little bit about your lime source and where you're getting that from, and what kind of material it is, so guys know what you're working with.
Sure. So Wisconsin has all what we call dometic lime. It's high in magnesium. There's a lot of stone quarries within very short distance of where we're at, but they're all high magnesium. You're going to be talking 16 to 18% magnesium and 21 to 24% calcium. Very, very small difference. Our native soil, it seems like, somebody hadn't done anything. You stick a soil probe in there, you're going to come back with about a 5.2 pH. It seems like that's just where it's at, and it ain't going to produce just real well. 2-3 ton of lime, 3 ton of lime. We've took a couple different farms, 3 ton of lime, and paid for it the first year. Now we got a truck. Trucking's our biggest issue. You got to go to Iowa or Minnesota or to Lake Michigan to get it. So we've kind of, for ourselves, have settled on a product that's they boated into Green Bay, and there's a facility there, Great Lakes Calcium. They're crushing. Well, they get in, I'm going to call it road gravel size product, and they run it through a quick dry, they call it, and then they crush it. And they got I'm thinking it's about a 3-story shaker box, so they can run product in, and they're shaking out particle size. They tell me the glass industry wants this particle size, and the feed for dairy wants this side, and swine wants something else, and chicken something else. When it hits the floor, that's the product that they were hauling across the road for years and making a mountain. So it was too dangerously close to the high line wires, and the owner said, you got to figure out how to get rid of that stuff. And that's the product we're getting. So it's baby powder like product. Very hardly any grit to it. So, but they know how to charge for it. And that pile has shrunk to a very manageable size now, and they charge for it, and then we got more in trucking than we do here. So that's, I called them. Finally, they will get somebody to talk to me on the phone. I wanted to buy direct several years ago, and he wanted to start explaining. I said, I understand calcium due to the growers program company. I gave him a little explanation, and he said, I want to come see you tomorrow. So we started a good relationship there, and seems like the phone rings. Somebody wants a dump truck load here and a dump truck load there. Nothing. We aren't covering quarters and sections, but we're covering 30-acre patches. And with good success. So it's going to cost about $70 a ton, between 70 and 75 to get it delivered to us. So it's not a cheap product, but it's definitely very beneficial. We don't get the phosphorus like Keith was talking about, but that's where the growers comes in. I've been just thinking about that. You don't, the last several years, any meeting, farm crop meeting you go to, they're talking about, how to raise 300 bushel corn, 100 bushel soybeans. The number one ingredient is phosphorus. And they was according to them. Well, there's wanting numbers they're throwing is like 150 pounds of phos you want in the soil. Or at first it made me mad to think about that much, and then I got thinking about, well, growers is 90% soluble versus the product they're talking about is probably 10%. So knock the zero off, you're at 15. That's right where we're at with the growers. And I'll have to say that we feel like we see that advantage. So
So, hey, Daniel, what kind of dirt do you have? Can you talk a little bit about that so guys can appreciate what kind of soil you're working with?
Oh, we got all types of soil here, but in majority it would be a sandy loam. Norden would be I don't know if that means anything to anybody, but it seems like about everything with a name is a Norden of some sort. Then we'd have some bottom ground, creek bottom. That enough water don't want to penetrate. You get up on the ridges, you end up with pockets, wet hole pockets. It's normally hard red clay looking stuff. Don't dry out. About a little working, but it can be. It's just amazing how you get some organic matter mixed in there, and you get your calcium in there, and it starts flocculating. Changes a lot. Then you can move. I mean, that'd be real close by. You go 6 miles away, and we got a farm that's, wouldn't be a rock on it. It's sand. We just harvested corn off of that last week, and I was just marveling at, it's, I don't even know how many years we've run it now, but first when we went up to look at it before we took it on, started renting it, the horseweed stalks were bigger than the corn stalks, and it was about blow sand. And we've hauled quite a bit of lime in there, and have run mostly corn. I guess I had hay on it for 3 years. And now it's corn again, and the soil's black now, and it's just full of earthworm castings. I mean, it's just the ground. They actually consumed all that hay mat, and we're pulling the lower leaves of the corn plants into the soil. I mean,
Wow.
the leaves, anything was touching the ground was pulled down in. It was what looking I had a chance to do. So,
talk a little bit about your rotation, then, Daniel. I mean, what are the various crops you're raising, so guys know that also.
So we would we're corn, soybeans, alfalfa, and winter wheat would be our crops. My 3-4 years ago, my goal was to get the hay rotation such that I would only run it 2 years established. I done some number crunching, and I felt like that was as economical as running corn for 4 years straight and taking the yield loss that you see with continuous corn, and planting a cover crop in after each corn crop. So what that does is that gets us hay on an acre more often, and then there's more than enough nitrogen and a good alfalfa stand to raise a corn crop. So we just run growers in furrow with the corn at planting time, and like alfalfa, that we're done taking care of it until harvest outside of herbicide application. Corn on corn, I'll come back in and side dress 28. When it's getting up waist high, and then our alfalfa, we strive for 3 gallons of growers every cutting. Not saying we don't miss a cutting once in a while due to workload.
How many cuts do you do in a year usually?
4 or 5.
Gotcha.
We would always take 4 cuttings. 5, probably 50% of the time. And soybeans were running we normally run a gallon of growers down with the planer, diluted with water, and then 1 or 2 foliar applications, with the goal of about 5 gallons of growers, and that's where we try to go with our soybeans. And so that's corn, that's beans, and winter wheat. Last several years we've we started out putting 2 gallon of growers down in the fall with the drill, and then I think last year we done 3, and this year we thought, well, Well, them years we'd come back in the spring and foliar spray, and this year we're putting everything down with the drill. So we're going to put 5 gallon down with the winter wheat in furrow, and with that'd be with 10 gallon of water. So we're putting 15 gallon the acre down. That's just where we can get a orifice size that don't plug as easy. So
that'll work.
You're pretty tight, 7.5 inch spacing. So so that's what we're trying. What we really like about that is every time we put growers out on our wheat with the drill, you get these cold mornings where the frost sets on it. Them plants by 10, 11 o'clock, the wheat's, it's dark green and it's growing. Sun come out, frost melted off, and it's there and it's alive. Where you don't put it on, just cover crop or whatever, it's stunted till middle of the afternoon. Well, it's dark by 6:30 around here now, so that don't give you much time to continue growing. So
exactly.
So
okay, very very good, Daniel. I some of these guys are starting to yawn on me, so I think I'm gonna have to cut you off. Hey, I really appreciate it though. You did an excellent job, and I think at this point, Russ, I think we're done, and we'll turn it back to you if you want to chat a little bit about when the next call is, and we'll shut her down at that point.
All right. Well, thanks, Jim. It was a great call. I think there's a lot of good conversation there. The next call is on November 13th. So that's the next call, November 13th. We'll get this up. So if you missed any part of this, we'll have this online so that way you can listen to it. And with that, have a good night. Take care. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Growers Mineral Podcast. Follow us on Facebook at Growers Mineral for updates. To submit questions for the show, email contact us at growersmineral.com.